I never thought I'd work a night that would change everything I believed about reality. My name is Fiona, and back then I was a nurse at a well-known hospital here in town. I was 27 years old, and the night shift was my daily challenge. Few people around, quiet halls. But that night, it all started when I saw a woman walking down a rarely used hallway. She seemed out of time, wearing an old nurse's uniform, a dress no one had worn for decades. Her hair was messy, her skin thick and dry, and her look... Oh, that look was full of rage, a kind of rage I'd never seen before. She was pushing an old wheelchair, rusty and completely out of place. I mentioned her to some colleagues, but they told me to ignore it, that those things weren't worth it, and that anyone who tries to understand them ends up badly. But curiosity is hard to control, and the night stayed strange. I began to notice faces, people who didn't really seem to belong there, like they were walking through different worlds. I heard stories from co-workers about places that shouldn't exist in that hospital, hallways that stretched beyond reason, stairs that led nowhere. And that's when I found the door, a simple door, numbered 304, which should have been just another patient room. But that door vibrated slightly, letting out a strange sound, almost a whisper. I heard voices behind it, and even with fear, something inside pushed me to open it. I crossed that door and found myself in a place that couldn't be part of that hospital. The air was heavy, smelling of mold and something else, something rotten and sweet at the same time. The walls were dirty, cracked, and the hallway stretched into a darkness that felt almost alive. Inside, I saw things I shouldn't have. Sick people, masks covering empty faces, beings that looked human but weren't. Doctors performing rituals instead of surgeries, babies walking like adults and attacking anyone who dared come close. The whole night was a waking nightmare, and when I finally got out, I knew that maybe nothing would ever be the same again. I had crossed a door of no return, a place between worlds where time and reality bend, and where hope seems to vanish. That night, after my encounter with the woman in the old uniform, I started realizing the hospital was hiding secrets no one wanted to talk about. Hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly, distant voices no one else could hear, and doors opening to places that made no sense. It was then that a co-worker, Sarah, told me about stories that had been circulating for years. Stories of unexplained disappearances, patients who never left that wing, and people vanishing in forbidden corridors. Sarah, who had been there a long time, warned me to avoid those places, but curiosity and fear drew me to the blocked-off hallway. There, the lights flickered, and the air was thick, almost suffocating. I saw shadows moving just beyond my sight, and whispers that seemed to come from the walls. It was as if the hospital was alive, watching my every step. I was determined to understand what was happening in that blocked-off hallway. With every step, I felt the weight of oppressive silence, broken only by the echo of my own footsteps. The walls, worn and stained, seemed to close in around me. At the end of the hallway, a pale green door caught my attention. Room 304. The doorknob was cold and unyielding, and a faint vibration ran through the wood when I pressed my ear to it. No sounds came through, just a feeling of something pulsing, alive on the other side. Without thinking much, I pushed the door open, which creaked loudly, revealing a space that no longer felt part of the hospital I knew. The air was thick with a sweet, rotten smell, and the flickering fluorescent light cast twisted shadows everywhere. The uneven floor and cracked walls gave the impression of a place forgotten by time. Inside, figures moved slowly, some seated, others curled on the floor, all with eyes that glowed like beacons in the darkness. Masked doctors circulated, their movements mechanical and silent, performing what looked more like rituals than medical care. I wanted to run, but something held me back. My body felt heavy, my legs trembled, yet my mind couldn't detach from what I was seeing. The terror was tangible, a horror that defied logic and invaded the mind. While I tried to make sense of the scene, one of the masked doctors approached me. His eyes, hidden behind the mask, seemed to search my soul. He held out his hand, gripping a syringe filled with thick yellow liquid. Before I could step back, he spoke in a hoarse, distant voice. "You don't belong here." My heart raced. The urge to run was overwhelming, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The feeling of being watched by those figures, who weren't entirely human, grew stronger every second. Suddenly, a muffled sound caught my attention, a low, rhythmic chanting coming from a room nearby. Moving closer, I saw an improvised altar where the doctors performed a strange ritual, singing in a language I couldn't understand, while shadows danced as if alive around them. Fear took hold, and I realized this hospital was not just a physical place, but a gateway to something much darker. A parallel reality where the rules we know don't apply, where time is fluid and fear is the only certainty. Gathering every ounce of strength left, I spun around and ran down the hallway, feeling hundreds of invisible eyes chasing me. The door to room 304 slammed shut behind me with a loud bang, leaving only the echo of chants and the suffocating heat of that dark world. I sprinted through the dark corridor, shadows twisting on the walls like they wanted to grab me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Each step echoed in the heavy silence, but I could hear footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, and not my own. I turned a corner and found an endless staircase. Each step seemed to repeat endlessly, forming a maze that sucked the breath from my lungs. I tried to climb up, but the stairs pulled me down, as if trying to trap me there forever. After what felt like hours, the stairs finally ended at an old double door without a handle, creaking as I pushed it open. Beyond was a different hallway, dimly lit by tired yellow lights, filled with the sharp smell of rust and something organic that made me nauseous. At the end of this hallway was an unlikely reception area, with people sitting and watching TV. But something was off. No one noticed me, and their eyes were empty, lifeless. The receptionist stood up and, with a strange smile, offered me a glass of water. I refused, and suddenly the masked beings appeared again, blocking my way. I was trapped. My instincts screamed that this was just another part of the nightmare that hospital had become. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I desperately searched for a way out, but the hallway seemed to close in on me. The masked doctors advanced slowly, their empty black eyes echoing with each step like a grim warning. Suddenly, a door beside the reception opened on its own. Without hesitation, I ran through it, feeling the air shift around me, like crossing an invisible boundary. On the other side, I found a place that resembled the real hospital, but everything was wrong. Faces were distorted, movements mechanical, and silence weighed down like a sentence. I heard muffled crying from a nearby room. I approached and saw a child with empty eyes and a sad expression, surrounded by shadows that seemed to reach out to her. The sight froze me, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I saw a child sitting alone in a dimly lit room. Her eyes were empty, her expression sad, surrounded by shadows that seemed to reach out and try to grab her. The sight froze me, but I knew I had to keep moving. Suddenly, a cold presence crept up behind me. I felt a hand, cold and foreign, rest on my shoulder. I spun around and faced one of the masked doctors. His empty gaze pierced through me as if searching for something deep inside. He lifted a huge syringe filled with a glowing yellow liquid, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. I was trapped. My body trembled in fear, unable to move. But then, in the darkness, a voice echoed in my mind, Cedar's voice, urging me to fight, to not give up. Summoning every ounce of strength, I dodged the syringe and ran down a corridor that suddenly opened up before me. The walls seemed to close in. The floor trembled beneath my feet, as if the place itself was trying to pull me back into the nightmare. I ran without looking back, every step a battle against the twisted reality trying to trap me. Whispers echoed along the walls, words I couldn't understand filling me with fear and confusion. My heart raced, breath shallow, but I knew I had to keep going. Turning a corner, I found an old elevator, its rusted doors slightly open, casting a cold, bluish light. Without hesitation, I stepped inside and pressed the button for the ground floor, hoping this machine would take me back to reality. But the elevator didn't descend. Instead, it trembled violently, buttons flickering in strange patterns, and a low hum filled the space. Suddenly, the doors slid open, not to the hospital lobby, but to a dark corridor, its floor shrouded in thick fog. I knew I was still trapped in that strange hospital, and the real nightmare wasn't over yet. I felt a cold grip on my arm and slowly turned around. It was the woman in the old uniform, her eyes black and empty, a twisted smile revealing sharp teeth. Without a word, she pulled me inside the elevator. The elevator shook violently, lights flickering wildly, and the doors slammed shut with a bang that made my heart race. When they opened, it wasn't the lobby I expected. Instead, it was a dark, cold hallway where shadows seemed to move on their own. The floor beneath my feet pulsed like a dark heartbeat. I wanted to scream, but my voice failed me. The feeling wasn't of being somewhere strange. It was like being consumed, sinking into something pulling me deeper and deeper. Not knowing where to go, I let myself be carried along that hallway, trapped in a silent, endless dance with shadows that would never let me go. The hallway seemed endless. With every step, the walls closed in a little more and the air grew heavier, almost suffocating. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, slipping away whenever I tried to focus on them. I felt something watching me, not from outside, but from inside, a presence that chilled me to the bone. My breathing grew rapid and shallow, and panic began to settle deep within me. Then, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, dragging, echoing through the silence. I didn't dare turn around. The hallway narrowed, the shadows took shape, and a barely audible whisper called my name. Every fibre of my being screamed for me to run, but my feet wouldn't obey. I was trapped, lost between what was real and what should never exist. The place seemed to close in behind me as I moved forward, my body trembling with fear and exhaustion. Shadows flickered in the corners, whispering words I couldn't understand, and the air felt so heavy I could barely breathe. Suddenly, a plain white door appeared ahead. It was simple, ordinary, but it radiated a faint light that seemed to promise escape. Gathering my last bit of strength, I pushed it open and found myself in a familiar room. My childhood bedroom, with walls covered in photos and the comforting scent of long-forgotten nights. The silence was thick, almost suffocating, but what froze my blood was my reflection in the mirror. There I was, but not really me. My eyes were empty and black, as if a shadow had taken my place, and a cold, twisted smile spread across my lips. My heart pounded. The room began to spin slowly. The lights faded, and the image in the mirror reached out to me. A shiver ran down my spine as I screamed and tried to pull away. But it was too late. Darkness swallowed me whole. I blacked out in that shadowy room, the weight of fear crushing me like never before. When my eyes finally opened, I heard Sarah's familiar voice calling me. "Fiona! Fiona, wake up!" Slowly, reality returned. I was lying in a hospital room, soft fluorescent light bathing the space, the usual sounds of machines and footsteps surrounding me. Everything seemed normal, as if none of that had ever happened. Sarah was there by my side, looking worried. But I couldn't shake the deep doubt that settled inside me. Was it all real? Or just a terrible nightmare? A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and stress? But the marks from that night wouldn't fade. The empty eyes of that woman, the endless hallway, the macabre ritual, the whispers. And above all, the scars I felt inside, invisible to the world, but real to my soul. Was the hospital where I worked, Sarah, and even myself, part of that dark labyrinth? The door is always there, somewhere, waiting to open again. And I know that no matter how hard I try, I'll never escape what I saw, or what I might have become. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, or felt that something strange was happening where no one else noticed, share your story in the comments. Do you believe there are places or moments where reality bends, where fear is more than just imagination? Type, "The door opened for me," and tell us about your moment, your passage into the unknown. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories that explore the edges of reality and the unexplained. Here, the horror doesn't end when the video stops. It lives on in your mind. Until the next story.